Okay, I was born in Edmonds, April 5th, 1934, at the southeast corner of 6th and Glen, which is over the back of the old high school. Was a very, very traumatic first few years. I can remember vividly watching the radio Sunday morning on December 7th, and my dad came in and he says, "That's not good news." And I said, "No, it doesn't appear to be." My sister was 12 years older than I was, so I was 8 and she was 20. Mm-hmm. And she was very good friends with 2 Japanese girls that were at Edmonds. We had 4 minorities. We had 2 Alaska Indians, who were the most popular kids in school, and then these 2 Oriental girls. And a short time later, in 1942, they came in and picked these 2 girls up and took them off to a camp in Idaho. My sister was absolutely out of her mind over it. And it was wrong. We all know that now. Mm-hmm. But anyway, she was trying to get out of the home environment. So she got a job at a place called Hungry Junction down in Seattle as a waitress. And of course, soon her and her girlfriend started messing with the military. And I used to, we had a big wide front porch on the house, and every Saturday or Sunday morning I'd go out to see who's laying in the hammock out there that maybe is AWOL. Followed some of these people through the war years. One of them was a guy by the name of Nakamura. They sent him to the Pacific Theater, and we all hoped that he wasn't going to end up on the wrong side of the track there. Ration stamps. Did you ever hear about ration stamps?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
We never had butter available in Edmonds, and my dad was a butter lover, and he found out that they always had butter at Kingston. Uh-huh. So he'd send me with money down to Kingston, or down to the ferry dock, and I'd ride the boat over to Kingston, and I'd buy apparently it was, as I recall, it was a quarter pounder, and wrap it up in newspaper, take it home, run crazy, get on the bike and get it back to home, so in the refrigerator. And I can remember early on in 42, my dad had not worked very steady for ages. It was just a bad year. And he came home one afternoon and he says, "I got a job working on barracks at Payne Field." And I'm kind of just sitting there listening. She says, "They told me I have to work 10 hours a day, 6 days a week." And I thought, oh, wow. He was absolutely enjoyed the fact that all of a sudden he would, and in a short period of time, really started putting the money away. Mm-hmm. But it was an early introduction to life in Edmonds on the fast track. Mm-hmm. When I was 14, I got a speedometer for my Schwinn bike with the big fat tires. And the speedometer went to 50.
Wow.
And I decided, well, there's only one place I can think of where I might be able to get to 50, and that's the big Main Street hill. And I'd get it up to about 40 or 45, and I'd bend over, and I couldn't get it up any further. So I put my belly on the seat, and I stretched out and back, and here I am going down there. If somebody had pulled out of Olympic view, I'd have been history. But it pegged out. I got it up to 50.
Oh, my goodness.
You know, a blown tire or anything would have been something else.
So,
how old were you when you did that?
Pardon?
How old were you when you did that?
Probably early junior high, maybe 7th grade. See, 7th and 8th grade was at the junior high over at the main building. And it was an interesting years. We had all kinds of things going on that we got away with that you'd never get away with nowadays. Like the time over here across the street, Ray Rasmussen was the police chief at the time. He was something else. He was something else. And anyway, they decided, and I've never been sure who did the actual deed, but he always parked next to that fire plug. and it just used to irritate us every time we drove by. He parked next to the fire plug. So I think it was a couple of guys from Richmond Beach area. That was a different group of people, Richmond Beach. And they brought an old logging chain, and they hooked it up over the rear axle and looped it around the fire hydrant. And then a bunch of them, me included, came through, stopped, squealed our tires and took off. And he come running out of the building, jumped in the paddy wagon, which there's a picture of here somewhere. It's one of those small vision of a, I can't remember the name of it. Anyway, it was a probably a 46, 47 Chevrolet, and the rear axle and the spline shaft going back to the transmission, all with one piece. So when he gunned it, he broke the shackles on the rear, and the car came off and dropped on the bumper. We never found anybody that would really own up to it. I've got some possibilities, but it was interesting. Very interesting.
Oh my gosh. So would you consider yourself a trouble child? Were you a kid that got into trouble a lot?
I was more wild than trouble. No.
Okay.
Did you get in trouble a lot?
Pardon?
Did you get in trouble a lot?
Never got caught. Only got caught once. Spent the afternoon in that jail over there.
Oh, was it? Wait, was the jail still in the museum?
It was as grimy now as it was then.
Oh wow.
But my cousin and I were driving our two cars. We came in on 3rd Avenue, and we turned left to go down to what used to be Hopper Chevrolet on the left of the post office. And as my cousin pulled out, he squealed his tire, pulled over to the side of the coupe and stopped. I did the same thing. Come over the curb and stopped. And we got out the cars and we were going to go across the street to Hopper Chevrolet. I don't know, buy a car or something. And these two old duffers decided that they were going to make an example of us. Now, I never got out of first gear column shift, so I never was over about 15 miles an hour, 15, 20. Well, anyway, this guy came down and he said, "We're going to make an issue with you guys." So they arrested us and charged us with reckless driving.
Oh no.
And so we were sitting in the jail, and it was kind of a joke, you know. I can't imagine why in the world that, you know, it's a long ways from that. Failure to do care and caution might be more applicable. So anyway, it all came down to the fact that we got charged, and my dad said, "Well, I think you better try to get it out of town." So my cousin and I hired a lawyer and tried to get a change of venue. That wasn't going to happen with Judge Doty. So we got our license suspended for 60 days. And it was 4 months before I got back on it. And it was one of those things where you had to get on what they called at that time assigned risk, which was a different insurance, you know. You paid about twice as much for it. Never got hooked after that. But if you had a run, and we'd always run south because you go across the county line and they didn't chase you.
So, where was the jail?
Pardon?
Where was the jail that you stayed
in? The basement over there.
In the Edmonds Museum?
Oh, yeah, in that old jail.
So, was it still the library upstairs when the jail was downstairs?
Yeah, still library upstairs.
And so, so what did you do as a kid? Like, can you go through a daily average day of what you did?
We were kind of loose cannons. See, my folks were older than everybody else's because my sister was 12 years older than I.
Oh, wow.
And it was interesting. It was an era that you never see again. But I remember one time Hutchinson would be a name that would come up in the Edmonds annals. And Tom and I were buddies around age 18, maybe right out of high school. And he decided that we're going to do some racing on Snake Road. You know what Snake Road is? You go out of town on 3rd, turn up the hill, and when you get to that light with the barber shop and the gas station, just before you start up the hill,
Yeah.
the road to the left,
Oh, okay.
and it gets into what we used to call the Snake Road, which is old Edmonds Everett Highway, I think is what it was. And it was interesting. So anyway, he decided he's going to cut this car in half. So he cut the front end off and extended it 2 feet more wheelbase.
Oh, wow.
And it held on there pretty good. I was never involved, but on one night, a weekend, they decided they'd fall a tree across it and block it off so that they could race on it.
Oh my goodness. And they actually did that?
Oh yeah.
Did they die?
Yeah, up to 5 corners. You know 5 corners?
Yeah.
Okay. That road eventually gets to 5 corners.
Oh my gosh.
Oh my goodness.
It's just really dangerous and stupid.
So, you went to school, right? Where did you go to elementary school?
Up the hill.
Up the hill at.
Francis Anderson.
And
Okay.
that was the high school as
She
well?
was my first grade teacher and also the principal
Who
at
was?
that time.
Who?
Francis Anderson.
Oh, so you actually met Frances Anderson?
Oh yeah,
Oh, that's so cool.
yeah.
Could you describe
She
her?
and Miss Christopherson were buds. Both of them teachers, but they were incredible teachers.
You were?
I have incredible memories from my grade school teachers. Mrs. Shakespeare, Miss Shakespeare, had the most beautiful penmanship. Just absolutely. She'd be talking to you and she'd write on the board when they had chalk and boards. And it was just perfect. The letters were all perfect and they were all level.
And
They don't teach that anymore. Apparently, cursive handwriting.
yeah,
They
that's
do
kind of
like 1 year and then they don't make you.
You print now.
yeah. They don't make you use the cursive anymore.
Yeah.
Did you have to use the cursive when you were?
Did I what?
Did you have to use cursive when you were in grade school?
Yeah.
And then did that carry through middle
I
school,
don't
high school?
remember ever changing.
Uh-huh.
I remember printing on occasions. I don't remember anybody saying anything that was bad about it.
Okay.
So the high school was also at the Francis Anderson
Yeah.
Center, right?
No, high school was over here.
Okay, but it was close.
7th,
to
8th, junior high was at where it used to be the shop. You know, the woodworking shop. Well, it's been gone for years.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Did you participate in sports in high school or in grade school?
Not really.
Okay.
Not really. I was more interested in chasing girls and having a car that ran good. And that was what I was always ready to work for.
So, what did you do on, like, your weekends during high school? What did all the kids here do?
You know, nothing really comes to mind other than going down Richmond Beach to beach parties.
Uh-huh.
I can remember a party down there one weekend during football season, and I could see. I don't remember where we got the beer, but somebody had it. And as I was kind of sitting back trying to decide who I was going to get friends with and who I wasn't. And could I get this girl out of here or not? And then there started coming down the hill all these red lights. And there was about 8 or 9 cop cars. County sheriffs, Richmond Beach had a cop at that time. And I stood in that swamp with the cattails, with water up to here for about a half hour waiting for them to get out of there so I could get out. They packed them away like you wouldn't believe. There must have been, I don't know, 10, 15 guys that got picked up,
Oh my
taken in.
gosh.
Oh my gosh.
I don't know whatever happened to them because most of them I didn't really know that well. I was kind of out of my element at Richmond Beach. We had a bunch of guys called the Beach Boys, and they were one all by themselves.
What about the Edmonds beach? Was that really a beach at that time, or was it just kind of a...
That's where I did get involved in baseball. I used to go down to the beach and bat rocks in the afternoon in the beach. You know, pick up a stick and bat rocks out in the water.
Mm-hmm.
So, how do you think your classmates would remember you?
About the way that I just described. We just had our big reunion last weekend.
Oh, really? How many
Yeah.
years? Was it your...
Class of 52,
So 60?
60th reunion.
Oh, wow.
And there were 3 people at that reunion I started the first grade with.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh.
That's awesome.
But most of the ones I was real friendly with didn't get involved. I just don't have a recollection of a lot of them.
Mm-hmm.
I was one that was trying to work different angles with different groups of people rather than get stuck with one group and then, you know,
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure you've done the same thing.
Yeah.
Had the opportunity to go one way or the other.
Yeah. So you're married now. When did you meet your wife?
Pardon?
When did you meet your wife, or where is this?
I knew my wife in high school, but I never dated her.
Mm-hmm.
We dated after school,
Mm-hmm.
and she wasn't really the first pick. Her girlfriend was the one I was trying to get, and I'm so thankful I didn't end up with her.
Does she know that?
Pardon?
Does she know that
Oh,
you were
yeah.
trying to get...
Yeah, a good friend of hers. But I'd have been a widow a long time ago because this woman had multiple health problems.
Oh.
That's too bad.
And my wife is, with the exception of a gallbladder attack 30 years ago, she's pretty much protected all the way.
So how did you know that your wife was the one?
It just seemed to fit.
Mm-hmm.
Just seemed to fit. And she stood by me with all the trials and tribulations of our lives. And we had plenty of them.
Uh-huh.
Had plenty of them. I made the first dive at Edmonds Ferry Dock, skin diving in 1955. Nobody else has been there first. I have many first dives in the San Juan Islands, in Friday Harbor, Point Disney, all of the places. I figured sometime back, after about 35 years of diving, that I had about 6,000 hours underwater. That's a bunch.
Wow.
I started off as a competitive freediving spearfisherman.
Mm-hmm.
That's back in the days when we had spearfishing meets. And you had to go by what the allotment was. And then we'd have these spearfishing meets, and then we'd call up the people that were going to evolve on the I lost it. I'm trying to think of 4 different things at one time.
Oh.
Yeah, we can go on. Go ahead.
How did you get started in diving the fish?
I've always been interested in, I can remember at a very early age down at the beach and thinking, wouldn't it be great if all that water would move out of there and I'd be able to walk down into this area and see what's down there. And in the summer of 1955, I found out that they had a dive store in Seattle. And so I decided I'd go down and see what they got to offer. And I rented a suit and a weight belt and a tank and a regulator, no diving. And the guy on the way out says, well, he says, to keep from having any trouble, never go up faster than your smallest bubble. And that's the way we gauge things.
Mm-hmm. So,
I've got pictures of 40-pound lingcod like you wouldn't believe.
so that's your job, right? Correct?
No,
It
that was
wasn't?
just a hobby.
Oh, wow.
How long did you do that for?
30 years,
Wow. It's a long time.
but not that active.
Okay.
I did some of the first underwater color photography in this area.
Wow. That's amazing.
And that was back when Dixie Lee Ray was the keeper of the Seattle Center,
Mhm.
the Science Center. She was overwhelmed with some of the stuff I brought back, of flowering of sea anemones in 90 feet of water that nobody had ever seen before, and here I had it on color film.
Mhm.
We made our own lights. We made our own lights
For
to light the underwater scene.
that's so cool.
And then ran them out of a generator in the boat. And we've got these lines coming down to these two lights, and you're dragging them down to get into where you get into something you want to look at.
Mhm.
But did that. That was my best job. I worked at Berg Film Productions for over 10 years. And when the big recession hit in '79, advertising budgets, the first thing that got cut, and all of a sudden I'm looking for a job. But I did find it. I worked for a couple of years later for a guy in Seattle. It was doing primarily television commercials. I did Space Needle commercials and several different ones. UGN was one of them. And then I found out that UGN, at that time, 60% of it was sucked up by overhead. You only got 40% to where it was supposed to go. Great time.
So did you have any other jobs?
Pardon?
Did you work anywhere else?
Well, my dad was worked in construction, ran a small crew, and I hated it. But it was the only thing I ever really made a lot of money at. But working with your dad is just not all that great for a lot of people. Did you work for yours?
Well, my dad works for my grandpa, so.
Ah,
But I can work with my dad, so.
where we at?
Well.
Okay, so are you a religious person?
No.
No? Okay.
Is that a family choice or your choice
No,
specifically?
it's my trade.
Okay.
I've spent too much time with astrophysics and geology and astronomy, and I just can't buy it.
So, do you have any theories on life then?
Do I have what?
Any theories that, I mean, religions have their own,
No.
no, nothing.
You're more
I'm
scientific.
not a
with
friend
it.
More
of all of them.
scientific?
I've been around them too much.
I see.
So, what are your parents like? Or where are they from?
My mother was born in North Edmonds in 1902. And my grandparents, my grandmother moved to Edmonds in, I think it was the year after the Seattle fire, which would have been 1890. And when Mom was born, they got burned out. Fire started and burned the whole thing down, burnt the baby clothes, burnt everything.
In Edmonds? Or
Oh yeah, that happened a lot.
was it a big fire? Like, do you know what caused
It
it?
was just a house fire.
And so, where did your dad originate from?
My dad came from North Carolina. It was a very mixed up family. My grandfather was a fire and brimstone preacher, Southern Baptist hardcore, a brutal man, and he died of peritonitis. That's when you got an appendix that gets infected and it bursts, and they didn't know how to take care of it in those days. So he died. And so my grandmother moved with three of the kids. There were five. There was six. My dad had two brothers, both brothers, and the other was three more kids. And it was disjointed. There was no, there was no welfare. There was nothing of this or none of that. You just had to suck it up and do it. And it was very difficult, very difficult. My mother used to talk about my grandmother when they got here. They were going to go make a timber claim in over by Cle Elum somewhere. And they went over there and they had to pack their stuff on pack animals to get over there. And they made the mistake of putting a jug of kerosene for the lamps in with a bag of flour. And Grandma said that flour always tasted like kerosene or something like that, because it leaked into the wheat. They had to eat it anyway.
Uh-huh. Oh, that's funny. So
my family comes from very poor, very poor. Very, very poor.
But you had a good childhood, correct?
No, I wouldn't say I had a good childhood. I have a lot of blanks in there that were difficult.
Mm-hmm.
I was one that usually tried to try people's patience, I guess you would say.
Mm-hmm.
How'd that turn out for you?
Pardon?
How did that turn out for you, testing your
Well,
patience?
I made it this far. I've now been through an eye stroke, which paralyzed this side. You see my cancer button on there.
Cancer sucks.
3 years ago, I was diagnosed with stage 3 lung cancer. And to make a long story short, I got a medical marijuana, and now my lungs are clean.
Good.
But I've got 2 hot spots and 2 lymph nodes that at the moment I'm doing nothing. I've decided that I've had enough doctor's appointments and medical appointments, and go for this test and go for that test. And I'm just sick and tired of going to doctor's offices and in and up on slabs in the x-ray lab getting PET scanned or CAT scanned or all that.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm heading down south, which I do in late September, early October. I spend 6 months in Arizona.
Ooh.
What part of Arizona?
It's called Surprise. It's northwest Phoenix.
Oh, okay.
And it's primarily elderly, retirees.
Mm-hmm. How long have you been going there? You go every year, or?
I've been going every year for some time. I retired in '98, and I started going down 3 months then, but now I'll go down 6 months. My wife she can't stand 6 months down there, so she'll come down and then she'll fly home and turn around and come back. She doesn't deal with the heat like I do.
Mm-hmm.
You like the heat?
You like
I
the heat?
love the heat.
Yeah.
Love the heat. And right now I'm fighting a big back problem. I thought I was going to have surgery, and the guy says, surgery isn't going to help.
Uh-huh.
You're going to have to suck it up and live with it. I'm not ready to do that yet because it's a real hindrance.
Mm-hmm.
The cancer never hurt. It never really did anything to hold me back per se.
Mm-hmm.
It was just one of those things where, you do your thing and either it works out or it doesn't.
Mm-hmm.
But I've always come in with kind of a jaded look at the thing.
Mm-hmm. Do you have any kids?
2.
How old are they?
Son's 52 and the daughter's 50.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Do you have any grandkids?
1, 24.
Wow.
And that's it. That's all we're going to get.
End of the era?
My son is never married, and our daughter didn't like pregnancy at all.
Ah.
Matter of fact, she hated it. She was sick and just...
It wasn't good for her.
It was not good for her, and she's short anyway. And when and Ben was a big kid. He was over 9 pounds.
Oh, wow.
She's done quite well. My son is still trying to find his niche, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Did your kids go to college or anything, or did they
I did not.
Okay.
Nor did they.
Okay.
My daughter's very well employed by a place called Plywood Supply over in Kenmore. She's been there for years.
Uh-huh.
And she's an outside buyer and seller. Shipping right now a lot of material to Alaska.
Mm-hmm. Ooh, that's good. So your kids, are you close to them? Do you see them like every...
I think it's close, excuse me, as close as most people with their kids at that age.
Mm-hmm.
Do they live The daughter obviously
Tony lives in
that.
Linwood, and Gina lives southeast Everett.
Okay.
Okay. So
Do you
they
get-
do live close.
Do you have any family traditions that you've had passed down?
Nothing comes to mind. Nothing comes to mind.
Mhm. Well, do you have an ethnic background at all?
A what?
And any ethnic background at all?
Been-
Can you say-
Ethnic? Like, did your family heritage, are they from Europe or have you traced back your family?
Traced back both sides. We traced back my grandmother's side to Quebec, where her father was on the Canadian Railway, and they got stuck out in a snowbank, and he ended up getting froze to death. And Quebec, of course, has been heavily Catholic, and so my grandmother and her immediate nucleus of people, which was about 3 or 4, and they decided that they were going to have to get out of there because otherwise they were going to take the kids and put them in a Catholic school. And that didn't buy. So the Catholic Church chased them all the way to Washington State.
Wow.
Wow.
No.
So I don't have very good feelings for Catholics.
Well, we'll go back to parenthood. So, how did you feel when your kids were born?
I was so involved in working, it was very, very difficult to have much of an opinion. My wife was an extremely good mother, and she got the job done while I was working 10, 12 hours a day and doing a lot of on-the-road photography at that time. Loved the job, loved the job. They made money on all the films that I had anything to do with, but he had no financial common sense.
Yeah.
And he was continually in over his head. And then, well, of course, when the recession happened, everything slowed down. And I came out of Channel 7. I was working as a production photographer at Channel 7. I tried every way in the world to get out of construction. Just never really made it. Eventually ended up doing small stuff myself. Apartment restorations and that type of thing.
So what would you say, this is a little change of topic, what was the most important or meaningful lesson you've learned in your life?
Wow. Well, when you make a decision, you're going to have to stick with it. You don't back out. Be timely. Let's not be messing around and be 15, 20 minutes late all the time, like a couple of friends of mine that I went to high school with. They're always late. Go to a reunion meeting prior to our reunion, they're always 10, 15 minutes late. And he was always the one that had to find out facts on something. But no, we used to go down on the waterfront. There was an old shingle mill right to the right of the ferry dock. And it was the only mill that was operating when I was that age. And a friend of mine, George, used to live over here. We'd go out and run on the log booms. Just dangerous as all get out. Jumping those logs from one to the other. And then it dawned on me, George didn't swim. He couldn't swim a stroke. Could not swim a stroke. But anyway, on the shingle thing down here, we used to go in, George and me and a cousin, and we would get in there and wait for the watchman to make his rounds. They made rounds every hour with his clock and turn the key. And so we'd pack a bundle of shingles and, clamp them down, put the nails in, take it out, and then start another bundle. We'd pack shingles, and I always wondered what those guys must have thought when they came in the next day, and here's a bundle of shingles that's been packed.
Yeah.
Troublemakers.
Just incredible stuff. Used to have a toilet on the end of the ferry dock, and that was one that we really was to wonder about. And I tried to swim around it always. But it just dropped right into the water out of the toilet. Oh yeah.
Ah,
Yeah, you go in there and look down the toilet, right into the water.
Oh, that's
ah,
disgusting.
that's so weird.
It was pretty gross.
Ah, people swim in that water. I've been in that water.
Well, of course, that toilet's been gone for a long, long time.
So, what are you most proud of in your life?
I think probably the ability to test the margins of safety with diving. I've been some really nasty places and was able to come out of it. We were diving the west side of San Juan Island by the lime kiln. Have you been up there?
No.
And it's a straight drop to about 90, 95 feet. And then there's a ledge about 20 feet wide. And then it goes down to 200 fathom. Just straight down the hill. And we try to get at the change of tides so that we didn't have that awful current going up and down that coast. And we guessed late once, and all of a sudden the current's coming, and I'm down at the ledge looking in a couple of holes for a lingcod, and all of a sudden the current comes up, and you couldn't swim against it. So grab your spear gun and you hook it into one of the rocks, and you get over where you can hold onto the rocks, and then you climb the rocks back up out of the water. But it pushed me down the line of probably 50 yards or so before I could get hold of the rock and get back up. I would eventually come back up, but whether I had enough air left or not, that was another story.
My goodness. And were you alone down there, or were there other people with you?
We very seldom dove alone per se, but not necessarily right by you where you could see.
Wow. That's scary.
That's terrifying. And that was your hobby.
And then, of course, this here, which you don't recognize.
No, not at all. Do you want to show the camera?
I think.
Like that?
Yeah.
Gold parachute wings. I was in the 11th Airborne Division in Germany
Oh, wow.
in 57, 58. That was when things were turning nasty down south. We had a bunch of people that shipped to Lebanon in the summer of 1958 to go down and solve the Muslim problem once and for all. Dumb young kid, boy, I'll tell you, you could tell that they weren't changing. They not only wanted you to change, but they were going to force you to change. And a friend of mine got one right between the eyes on a sniper down there.
Oh, that's so sad.
I've had a very, very active life. Very, very active life. I don't know anybody else that has not been a diver, one of my diving compatriots, that felt any other way. We covered the area. Go ahead.
So, what would you say is the happiest moment of your life?
You know, I don't really have a happiest moment of my life, I don't think. No, I just don't have it.
Okay. Is there anything else that you'd like to add that we didn't cover in this interview?
Well, I could go on for hours about the World War II. I can remember they were having a metal drive right there by the fountain in the middle of 5th. And I can remember coming down on my bike and looking and seeing metal bed frames stacked up. All kinds of metal bed frames. And then they finally came in and got it all picked up. But boy, I'll tell you, it was something. I didn't realize how much I liked sugar. Sugar was one of the things that was tough to come by during World War II. Sugar in any kind of meat.
Yeah.
And mostly byproducts of a cow. Butter, cream. Milk was never seemed to be a problem, but butter was always a problem. So anyway, and I think it was the 7th grade, and the folks decided they were going to build their house. So they bought a property off of 9th and Cedar. And I'm thinking, where are we going to go now? If we move out of this house, what's going to happen? Well, what we moved into was a 20 by 20 uninsulated building in back of my grandmother's house, which was the studio for my uncle, who is one of the big four painters around here, Guy Anderson.
Mm-hmm.
You probably recognize Guy Anderson. No? No? Okay. He's one of the big four. That was his studio. And you could see through the walls, and we spent 18 months in there. Mm-hmm. No water, one bare light bulb in the ceiling. And I finally built a camp, nailed together with old bent nails and stuff that we picked up when they were doing the add-on of the high school, and carried plywood up there. It was not a very nice place. Nobody knew where I lived for a year and a half.
Yeah.
Wow. How old are you in this time?
14?
Wow.
13. Yeah, 13 or 14.
Wow. Wow.
You know, during the war, you didn't get anything made out of metal.
Mm-hmm.
So bikes were at a premium.
Mm-hmm.
I remember when Dad bought this bike, and I couldn't believe it. $60 he paid for it, and that was a lot of money.
Mm-hmm.
But I ran the wheels off it. It was
good.
It was go.
Isn't that the bike that you went down Main Street on?
Yeah, same bike. Same bike.
That's so fun.
All right, so we're gonna have to get you to say your name for the camera.
Okay, Gary Crymes.
All right, and thanks for being interviewed.
Thank you.